Hi guys, hope everybody had a good long fall break. We are today going to talk about how fabric is constructed. And so please just watch the PowerPoint first and then you can go back and fill in the graphic organizer with the notes. If you need to, you can come back and refer back to this video if I went too fast and you missed something. Alright, so last week you watched two different videos. One was on natural fibers, and then on Wednesday you watched the one on synthetic. So remember, natural is cotton, linen, silk, and wool. Cotton and linen come from plants, and then silk comes from silkworms, but we still call it animals even though it's an insect, and then wool is from sheep. All right, then we have the synthetics that are all man-made, and typically, like nylon, polyester, they are all made from oil, petroleum products. All right, and so they have some qualities that natural fabrics don't have, and vice versa. Natural fabrics are sometimes better for other things or other instances that we're wearing. So what we do is we blend those fibers together to try and make the best fabric that's comfortable, affordable, sustainable is a big thing right now, and that we can wear and use in clothing and home decor items. So the two most popular fiber blends are cotton and polyester. All right, if you remember, cotton is strong, it's easy to dye, it's breathable, it's very, very comfortable to wear. And then it's great for sensitive skin. Like, most people aren't allergic to cotton, whereas people can be allergic to wool. Polyester, the pros are it's durable, it dries quickly, it does not wrinkle, which is one of the things that cotton does. It wrinkles really bad, and it doesn't fade, because when they make polyester they actually put the dye or the color in the chemical before they turn it into the fiber. All right, so when you combine those two fibers together to make poly cotton, then the t-shirts that they make out of it, they don't shrink. It makes it more affordable because you don't have to use so much cotton to make an article of clothing. And then it keeps its color and it keeps the shape. So we're trying to just combine things to get the best product we can. So that's what a fiber blend is. The most popular one is cotton polyester. I guarantee that at some point during the week you wear cotton polyester as a part of clothing. It's everywhere. All right, the second most popular one is cotton and spandex. So cotton doesn't really have stretch, and when it does, it kind of gets stretched out and doesn't spring back. And so if we add spandex to cotton, it makes it stretchy. All right, spandex is what like your swimsuits are made out of. All right, or athletic wear is made out of spandex a lot. And so when we add cotton to spandex, we get a more stretchy fabric. So if you have on skinny jeans right now, or you're wearing joggers or yoga pants, then it probably has that cotton and spandex blend so that you can get your skinny jeans up over your booty. Because if it didn't have spandex in there, you couldn't pull them up over your booty and your hips. So that's why we put spandex with cotton. So those are the two most popular blends. Now we're going to look at how we turn those fibers first into yarn and then into fabric. All right, so we take the fibers and we're going to make it into yarn. Now when I say yarn, I don't want you to think about yarn like that your mom or your grandma or your aunt or maybe even you crochet or knit with. It's not that kind of yarn. The yarn we're talking about is like really thin threads. All right, we just call it yarn in the garment industry because you're spinning it together and making these long strands of thread. All right, so the definition of yarn is just groups of twisted fibers. Now, you have two types of fibers. You have filament yarn, which is made of those filament fibers. And filament fibers are those long, long strands. Typically, filament fibers are the synthetics, all right, because they can, as they're making that fiber, they can make it and just stretch it as long as it needs to be. All right, silk is also another filament fiber. As they unwind that silk cocoon, it just makes a really, really, really long fiber. Things like cotton and wool are actually spun yarn because they're shorter staple fibers. And if you remember from the first video you watched last week, she talked about how cotton, when they pick it, is actually dirty and they have to like extract a bunch of it. So you're left with all these short fibers that then they have to spin together to make long strands. And so when you look at a spool of thread, and when we sew in class we use either cotton thread or poly cotton thread, if you look at it really close you can see all those tiny little fibers that they spun together to make that thread. All right, now they're going to take these yarns and they're going to combine them 3 ways to turn the yarn into fabric. So they're either going to weave it, so woven, they're going to knit it, or they're going to have non-woven or felted. So we're going to start with woven. All right, what happens when they weave fabric, or to create woven fabric, they weave it. And so in the olden days, people used to do this for their families. It took a long time, it didn't make a lot, so people only had like 1 or 2 outfits to wear throughout the week. All right, but what you're going to do is you interlace the warp and the weft yarns at a 90-degree angle. All right, nowadays, fortunately, we have machines that do this for us, so nobody has to sit there and weave the fabric or weave the yarns to make fabric. But the problem with woven is that it doesn't have a lot of stretch, or it doesn't have elasticity, and it does kind of stretch out. All right, it is the easiest of the fabrics to learn to sew on, though. All right, so warp and weft. When fabric is woven, we have warp yarns that are placed on the loom vertically. So these ones make up that lengthwise grain. If you remember, we talked about lengthwise grain a couple Fridays ago for your digital assignment, and they're the ones that run straight up and down. And so if you have like an article of clothing that's uncomfortable to wear, like as you walk, it twists around your body and you're constantly tugging at it, or you have like one pant leg that wants to like wrap around your leg a weird way, it's because it wasn't cut on grain. It means the pattern was placed on there slightly crooked, and these warp yarns want to get back to straight up and down vertical. Now, how do I remember warp is I want you to think of Star Trek. And in Star Trek, they go to warp speed to escape their enemies. All right, so to remember warp, warp goes straight up and down because if you go to warp speed, you're way up in outer space. Let your geek flag fly, guys. Think of Star Trek for warp, all right? Straight up and down, warp speed. Now the weft is what gets woven in between the warps. All right, so it's going to go under, over, and then it comes back around and does it again. All right, so to remember weft, I want you to think that we weave right to weft. Pretend you have a speech impediment and you can't say your L's. So right to weft. That's how you remember that those ones are crosswise. It has a little bit more stretch, but not a lot. Now, there are different ways to weave. If you have things like button-up shirts, flannel shirts, nylon jackets, it's just going to be a plain weave. Over one, under one, over one, under one, and it just keeps going. All right, there's kind of 2 different ways to do that. You can have things that are basket weave, where it goes over 2, under 2, over 2, and it kind of creates like a basket or a Panama weave. Some Hawaiian shirts are woven like this because it's very breathable, like the air can circulate through it. We have the twill weave, and there's 2 different ways to do the twill weave. You can go under 2, over 2, under 2, over 2. Or you could go over 3, under 1, over 3. But either way, it creates kind of a diagonal pattern. So if you have on jeans right now, kind of look down at your leg, and in the jean, you should be able to see this diagonal pattern because they weave denim like this to make it stronger. All right, and then the last weave is called a satin weave, and that's typically over 4, under 1, over 4, and then it just continues throughout the whole piece of fabric. This one is delicate, all right, because if you snag it, it's going to snag, and if you cut it, it will just eventually start fraying. All right, so they weave silk like this because it's delicate, it creates that shiny texture. So those are all of the different ways they can weave fabric. Again, easy to sew on, not very much stretch. Okay, the next one is knit. So knit is made by looping yarns together. And because we have these loops, they can stretch apart. All right, so things like your t-shirt, sweatshirts, yoga pants, your swimsuit, your underwear is all made with knit because it stretches and it makes it more comfortable to wear. All right, so I want you to think, like in the olden days, we did it by hand. Some people still do this as like part of their hobby, is they knit with knitting needles. Nowadays, to make like t-shirt fabric, sweatshirt fabric, we use machines, but it's still making those loops so that it's stretchy. Now there are a couple different types of knits. Jersey and interlock is what most t-shirts are made out of. Interlock is a little bit, I don't want to say nicer fabric, but it is kind of a nicer, tighter knit. Pont is thicker, and they would make like leggings, really nice leggings, knit blazers. Sheath dresses are often made out of pont. It's a little bit thicker. We have French terry. From one side, it kind of looks like sweatshirt material, but then the other side has a pile, which looks like a towel, like a bath towel. So it has that. There's sweater knits, there's sweatshirt, and then there's rib knits where they rib it or they knit it so that you can see the ribs. So a couple different types of knits. The third way they can make fabric is non-woven or felted. And so what they do is they have the yarns or the fibers, and then they press them together with heat, moisture, or pressure to create the fabric. All right, they do this a lot with wool. And then they also do it with felt and interfacing. Interfacing is the stuff that we used in the center of our lanyards and also in our needle books. All right, it's not really comfortable to wear a non-woven fabric because it's usually kind of stiff. It's not breathable because there's like no pores for the air to get through, and it's quite itchy. So typically you don't put a non-woven or felted fabric next to your skin. Maybe you would do it for like a Halloween costume or if you're into cosplay and you use felt, but you're going to be really sweaty at Comic-Con and itchy. So we don't really use this one for actual clothing. It's more for home decor items and to make fabric stiffer, like with interfacing. All right, I hope you guys have a great week. Please go and open the assignment and just take the notes and then submit it here in Canvas, and I will talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.